All right, here we go. Part three of the rise of the Ottomans. This is the last bit of information you need before your midterm. We have a few more sultans to get through. Last time, of course, we had talked about Mehmed II and his role in expanding the Ottoman Empire. We, of course, also talked about the idea of the millets. And just to bring up our map here again, and just to remind us, 1453, he takes over Constantinople, of course, and by 1481, he had conquered Greece, he had moved up north through much of the Balkans, all of this area that you could see here by 1481 is conquered and part of Ottoman civilization. So, he's doing pretty well there for himself. When he dies, the story is going to continue as we continue on the Golden Age. So let's kind of see what happens after 1481. So he's got a son named Bayezid. And Bayezid II is now going to be the new Ottoman Sultan. Bayezid, he is interesting because he has a brother named Jem. And we've seen this before. You have a brother, the brothers fight, what happens? Well, with the case with Jem, Bayezid is actually going to make him an offer. He's going to go to his brother and say, hey, how would you like to take control of Greece? I will let you have Greece. You leave me alone. I don't have to kill you. And Jem said, no, thank you. I know it's brother versus brother. I want to control everything, which of course leads to a conflict. And Jem managed to escape. He wasn't killed. He's managed to escape, and he goes to France. In 1482, he flees to France. When he flees to France, the Pope at the time, Pope Innocent VIII, he decides to approach Jem and say, hey, I know you have this conflict with your brother. How would you like to, join me? And we could take a little bit of a hit against the Ottoman Empire. And the reason I tell this story is, you'll see it's a couple points to it, but one of the reasons it's important is it does show how the West is really worried about the Ottoman Empire, where the Pope is getting this involved, where the Pope is making contact with a brother of the Sultan, Bayezid II, because he's trying to, hammer at the Byzantine and the Ottoman Empire any way he can. So anyways, it doesn't really go anywhere. Gemmis dies from a fever in 1485, I believe. He dies from a fever, but it doesn't, lead to major conflict, but it does kind of show the thinking in the West of how concerned they are with the growth of Ottoman power. The other thing that's important about all this is it does keep Bayezid from expanding too much. One of the things about Bayezid, he does have to spend a lot of time dealing with his brother. He's not able to go and conquer a tremendous amount of land. And you go, well, is that a bad thing or is that a bad thing? It's not really a bad thing, because if you conquer too much land too quickly, it's really hard to defend those borders, especially after Mehmed just added Constantinople. That's going to take a long time in itself to transition. Now, saying that, Bayezid will be involved with a conflict with Venice, and it seemed like he was really trying to pick a fight with Venice. So let me go through this, because there's going to be several things Bayezid is going to do to kind of pick a fight with Venice again. So these are all in the 1490s. I'll go through them a couple times to make sure you don't miss them. 1491, Bayezid basically exiled the Venetian foreign ambassador out of the Ottoman Empire. And Venice is like, well, that's not nice, but we're not going to fight a war over it. Then in 1496, Bayezid closed the Ottoman ports to Venetian trade for grain. So if Venice wanted grain to trade grain into the Ottoman Empire, Bayezid said, nope, these ports are closed to you. So again, Venice is not happy with that, but still no war. Also in 1496, there was a city called Montenegro, and that city of Montenegro was under Venetian control. It's an area near Greece. And basically, Bayezid went after Montenegro, and Venice still did nothing. So Venice really seems to be trying to avoid a conflict here, but Bayezid kind of keeps poking the bear, so to speak, keeps prodding, until we get to 1497. In 1497, there was actually a Venetian passenger ship that was captured by the Ottomans, and when it was captured by the Ottomans, Bayezid had the passengers there enslaved. And then finally, in 1499, Bayezid actually imprisoned the Venetian citizens living inside of Istanbul. So this was a series of things he did, just to again go through them again quickly so you get him. So 1491, he exiles the Venetian foreign ambassador. 1490, you don't need to memorize the dates, just 1490s is fine. 1496, he closes the ports to Venetian trade, some of the ports at least for grain trade. He seizes Montenegro, as I mentioned. He then seizes a Venetian passenger ship, and then he imprisons Venetian citizens who lived in Istanbul. So all of this eventually triggers a conflict with Venice and the Ottomans again. We talked about this before, if you remember. So this conflict rages on only for a couple of years. Not much land changes hands. The Ottomans do acquire a few more ports in the Aegean Sea yet again and kind of dominate the Aegean Sea a little bit more. So it just a little bit, but it's not massive expansion. But it's still important. So definitely kind of know that. If you missed any of those points, just kind of go back, listen to them again in terms of everything Bayezid did to get Venice involved in this war. The other point about Bayezid that I always mention is 1492. We oftentimes recognize that date, 1492, Columbus set sail, the ocean blue. But this was a very interesting time, of course, in Spain, where a lot of the Jewish inhabitants of Spain were exiled. Where did they go? A lot went to the Ottoman Empire. And it was Bayezid who kind of embraced much of the Jewish people who were leaving Spain, this exile. This Jewish population really contributed a lot to the Ottoman Empire, actually. And when I teach this class in person, sometimes I have students do group projects. And in these group projects, one of the group projects is like the role of Jewish people in the Ottoman Empire. And it was pretty extensive, actually, in medicine, in science, in literature. And so there were a lot of things that the Ottomans embraced the Jewish people, come in there, and then the Jewish people helped the Ottomans. So that happened during the reign of Bayezid II as well. All right, so hope all that's clear. Let's go on to what happens after Bayezid dies. After Bayezid dies, he has three sons, and you can see them here, Korduk, Ahmed, and Selim. Selim is the important one because Selim will become the Ottoman Sultan in 1512, and he is known as Selim the Grim. Why does he get that nickname? Well, he's going to kill his brothers, but for Ottoman history, that's just kind of status quo. Sad to say, but true. But he doesn't stop there. Like one of the brothers had help from this tribe called the Kizilbash tribe, right? And what does Selim do? He kills 40,000 of them. Basically finds 40,000 people and kills them because they sided with the brother of Selim. He was known as just being very angry and brutal, even to his own advisors or visors, right? So if you were a visor for Selim and something didn't go well, he'd kill you. In fact, it was so well known that there was a curse at the time. If somebody, if you get mad at somebody, you go, may you be a visor for Selim, right? In other words, maybe a visor for Selim, may somebody kill you because that's how Selim acted. So he killed his brothers. He killed many people in this Kizilbash tribe. He kills his advisors. But that's not what gives him his nickname, believe it or not. What gives him his nickname is he even killed his own sons. So Bayezid didn't just kill his brothers. He killed all of his sons except apparently for one, because he wanted that son to rule over the Ottoman Empire. So not a nice guy. He will add Egypt and Jerusalem to the Ottoman Empire. So he does add both Egypt and Jerusalem to the Ottoman Empire. So that is important of things he does succeed in doing. But again, a very brutal guy. All right, so that's the story of Bayezid's sons, and Selim the Grim is the most important. So again, he had one son, and his one son, most people haven't heard about a lot of these Ottoman sultans, but if there is a name many people have heard of, is one of his sons that does take over, because his son is going to push Ottoman civilizations to its apex. Who is the son that does this? A man named Suleyman, who of course becomes known as Suleyman the Magnificent. He was known that way in the West. People in the West referred to him as Suleyman the Magnificent. And so he ruled from 1520 to 1566. He's going to be involved in a number of conflicts. He's going to do a number of things. His name is spelled a couple ways. That's why I put an alternate spelling, Suleyman. I've seen it spelled both ways. I told you before some of these Ottomans are going to be spelled differently. There's a good primary source in your packet of sources by a Westerner describing what it's like in Ottoman civilization under the reign of Suleyman. So you definitely want to read that. It's a good source to give you some more information of the time period. So we'll start with a map. I'll talk about a couple things, and I'm going to give you some more keywords, come back to the map, and show you some more things he's going to do. So one area he conquers is this region of Belgrade. So, moves a little bit even further north, up into this kind of border area now that you're seeing with what the Austrian Empire is trying to move south towards. So he conquers Belgrade right there. You can see that. He conquers the island of Rhodes. And, it's interesting because the island of Rhodes is a tiny little island. He goes, it's really that important? Well, apparently it is for strategic reasons. And it was really big effort he put to get the island of Rhodes. He sent 300 ships, 100,000 men to conquer this little island. The island was defended by a group of knights known as the Knights of St. John's, as you could see there. And that Knights of St. John's, they are the ones who were defending that island. Well, Suleiman got the upper hand. He conquered the island. The Knights of St. John's ended up fleeing to Malta, a tiny little island off the coast of Sicily. So it was again an early little achievement for Suleiman. So right off, he's going to start conquering land, kind of like Mehmed II did, but he's going to do more things than conquer land. So let me go through more keywords with you, and I'll bring up the map again. I didn't want to throw too much up at one slide because you're about to see Suleiman does a lot of stuff. All right, so I hope all that's clear. And these are some other key terms or keywords for Suleiman. So go ahead, get all of this stuff down. If you need a minute to write them all down, go ahead. Okay. And after you write it all down, if you need a pause, go ahead and do that. I'm going to go on to the next slide, which is the map again, and start talking about all the things you see up here. All right? All right, here we go. All right, so the first thing there was the Battle of Mohawks, and that's up here all the way up in 1526. And basically here he's going to be fighting near Hungary, right? And it's against Austria. So here's the Austrian Empire there, and there's going to be some conflict there. And what we're going to eventually start to see is more conflict between the Ottomans and Austria, and this kind of serves to increase a lot of the tension in the Baltic areas there. So he was able to conquer parts of central and eastern Hungary. Later on, they're going to lose that land. That's why if you see on the key here, it says area lost to Austria in 1699, but that's years later. So for now, he's kind of moving up there and conquering some areas there. So that's important as well. Another region that he's going to conquer is Iraq. So all of this area over here, Iraq, Mesopotamia, Baghdad, it gets kind of cut off on the map a little bit there. But that's another region he's going to conquer. One of the other key terms there I put was Safawids or Safawids. It's sometimes spelled with a V, sometimes it's spelled with a W. But this is the time period where he's going to move into that region as well. One of the things this begins to do is create a lot of conflict between the Safawids and the Ottomans. And there's more information on your textbooks on them. This is another one when I do these lectures in class, I have students do group projects on the Safawids. And they're a very powerful civilization in what is modern day Iran. So, if you remember right off this map, you have Iran, right? It would be over here, right? And here would be Iraq, and they kind of border each other. And one of the things that we start to see also is this is kind of where you're starting to have some conflict between the Safawids and, in this case, the Ottomans. And in later years, this kind of continues all the way into, again, 1980s, Iran and Iraq. So this is an area that he's going to conquer. Baghdad, that's going to be part of the region that he's going to take control of. Another thing Suleiman is going to be known for doing is creating a law code, and so that was the other term I put there, I believe, the Kanunami. I can never pronounce that one well, sorry. But that's kind of Suleiman the lawgiver, as he's sometimes called, because he creates a law code as well for the Ottoman civilization. He codifies the Ottoman laws. So that's something he's going to do as well. So that's another one of his achievements. There's going to be architecture built during his time period, some beautiful mosques that are going to be built. So before I get to that, just to kind of summarize all the territory you could see he's going to conquer. So he moves up north a little bit more, right? So he's moving up north area, has this conflict up here, moves into Baghdad. He's also going to take over a little bit more of North Africa. So really, by the time Selim II, I'm sorry, I don't know why I say Selim, Suleiman dies in 1566, they've conquered everything basically you see colored on this map. So pretty impressive. But it's not just the conquest. Other than the conquest, he does the law code, right? So that's important. And again, he had the keyword on that. And a lot of other achievements. This is this mosque. Check this thing out. This is beautiful. Just a striking mosque called the Blue Mosque of Suleiman sometimes, but that's something, a good example of why we call it a golden age. They're building really magnificent architecture there. Another thing that you have is tremendous amount of literature during this time period. It is estimated that about 25% of the literature in all of Ottoman civilization happened during the reign of Suleiman. So there was poetry called divan or diwan poetry that was very famous at the time. There was mathematics. One of the names I gave you before on the key words was Ali ibn Velib. So it's Alibnveli, if you don't have it down, but remember those keywords are written down before. And he developed more algebra, more trigonometry. So we have that during that time period. Astronomy. We know during the time of Suleiman that they were building observatories, and they were even experimenting building rockets, believe it or not, at that time. So really, really super advanced stuff. And again, to give you perspective, this is in the 1500s, early 1500s. Yes, the West is starting to catch up a little bit. They're doing the scientific revolution a little bit, but this is a time when Galileo was put under house arrest for saying the Earth goes around the sun. For saying that, yeah, the Earth goes around the sun. So Galileo was put under house arrest around this time period, and here they're building observatories and all these things. So a lot of math, a lot of science, and then a lot of stuff for recreation even. There was tremendous wealth coming into the Ottoman Empire during this time period. So let me give you a couple examples of recreational things during this time. This was one of the key words, a game called Sarit. And it's kind of this weird little game they played. It's kind of a cross between polo, the horse game, and hockey, apparently, where you, take a stick and run around and take the ball to try to move a ball around a field. I don't know all the details about it, honestly, but it was a popular game they played at the time. This is another one they did is these little puppet shows called Karguz shows, and these were apparently very popular, where people would have these little puppets and they would each have characters and they would mean something, and these were very popular shows that they had inside of the Ottoman Empire during these times. So that was something else they did. There's so much wealth. They had these guys are moving around. It's kind of funny. And they had. Their slaves. There are reports that their slaves had jewelry, right? So imagine slaves with jewelry in them. So that tells us something about them as well. Another thing that they had, your first Starbucks, coffee houses. Those were very popular during the time of Suleiman. And this was a place where people would go and they would hang out and they would relax. And it's kind of interesting because right now, during the golden age of the Ottoman Empire, this is just seen as a nice thing. And you had these coffee houses and people would go and, as a way of recreation and relaxation and so forth. Later on, after the midterm, when you start talking about the fall of the Ottoman Empire, I'm probably going to mention these coffee houses again, because there's something else people do in these coffee houses, and it's simply talk. And as they talk, well, some people are going to start thinking maybe we don't like these sultans so much. And these coffee houses, which are sometimes part of the apex of Ottoman success and part of the golden age and part of the recreation of the time, are also going to be part of the reason why the Ottoman Empire declines later on and falls. So we'll get to that later. So all in all, Suleiman's reign is pretty impressive. He conquers land, he builds up observatories, more math, more science, more literature. All of those things are taking place during the reign of Suleiman. We get to 1566. And we get to 1566, and he tries one more thing at the very end of his reign. Remember Malta, that little island I mentioned earlier, just south of Sicily there? Well, he decides he wants to go after Malta. Remember, that's where the Knights of St. John's went? And so he sends 200 ships, about 30,000 men. He tries to siege this island for months, and he fails. He actually doesn't succeed. And at the time when this happened, people were like, whatever, no big deal. It's a tiny little island. But it's a bit, hindsight's 2020. You might be able to go back and look at that and go, oh, this is really kind of the first time the Ottomans wanted something and they really didn't get it. Up to now, look at what the Ottomans have done. They've gone from this little tiny area right here. Remember where we started, Bursa, the couple lectures ago, and then Thrace, and then Nicaea, and then, Greece, and of course Constantinople, and then all the way up into the Balkans and all of Asia Minor, and now into the Middle East, into Jerusalem, into Egypt, into the North Africa area. They really conquered tremendous amount of land. And that's kind of the apex, which means, of course, after Suleiman dies, things are going to go downhill. I will say this, the fall is not overnight. Everybody who knows this knows that the Ottoman civilization is going to go on all the way until the 1900s. So it's not as though they just go from this tremendous, rise and then boop, fall. When you talk about Ottoman civilization, yes, they rise very nicely and they go through a steady rise, and then they're going to go through kind of a bit of a roller coaster decline. And that's kind of what we're going to pick up with after the midterm as we talk about the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And I do enjoy talking about the rise. There's some colorful characters, some interesting stories, very important sultans, but it's their fall that really has a major impact on global history and Middle Eastern history, of course. All right, so I hope all that was clear. I hope you have all the information now you need for your midterm. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know. And that's it. All right, take care.